We are go.
Okay.
We are go for launch.
All right. I got my hands up. I got them ready. Welcome to Comics in the Making. My name is Ryan Holgerson. I'm the creator of Slackmatic, and I'm joined, as always, by Levi Erickson, the creator of The Big. Levi, how you doing?
Pretty good. Let's do this one. I'm excited.
Oh yeah. Okay. So, um, we're going to be talking, I think, about a few things today. Um, but we're gonna blend it all out of this starting conversation. And I think a lot of this is gonna come back to writing and maybe the dangers thereof. Um, so first off, uh a lot actually what's funny is a lot of this is going to be coming from other podcasts and YouTube shows that I've been listening to while I work. Um, but recently, this past week, I was listening to the newest episode of the Ink Pulp podcast, and a great show. Go check it out. It's a lot of fun. If you like our show, their production value is even better than ours. It's so great. It's awesome. So, and they talk a lot about working in comics and everything like that. But what they were talking about this last episode was the cancellation, and I'm talking about cancel culture, the cancellation of Craig Thompson, which I was unaware of. And I guess this happened a few years ago. For the people that don't know, Craig is the author of Goodbye Chunky Rice, of Blankets, Habibi, Space Dumplings. His newest series is Ginseng Roots, which he's been releasing sporadically the last few years. I think it's been sporadic because of, I guess, what happened. And it appears what happened is at some point around 2020, uh, online somewhere. That's the thing. I don't even have the real, I'll be honest, I don't have the real specifics behind this because I wasn't aware. But essentially, at some point, people started saying, well, Craig did not have the right to write and draw Habibi. Habibi is a fictional story. It chronicles a woman and a boy. It's really a coming of age story, but it has to do a lot with Islamic culture. Now, I say Islamic culture, but to be honest, he references the Quran. He references pieces from Arabian folklore, like Arabian Nights. Um, but it's set in a fantasy world. It is not a real world. And there's a lot of depictions of sexual violence in the book. Now I've read this book. I read it years ago. I don't have it. I actually borrowed it from a friend and read it, gave it back to her. So it's been a long time since I've read it, but and I'm not of Islamic descent or Arabic descent or anything like that, but for me, I thought it was a very pretty touching story. Uh, I didn't see any sort of controversy in it. Are there gruesome images depicting sex and stuff like that in it? Yes, but they serve the story. Um, so in turn, because of this cancellation online where the mob came for Craig, he was, I guess, dropped from his publisher, Drawn and Quarterly. He's since found another publisher for his new books. But it just really got me thinking, and this is all in the wake of, of course, Ed Piskor and stuff like that, of how dangerous is it for us to write? And and there are parts of me, and I want to say something straight off the
Yeah.
bat too. We're not talking about woke. All right. I know that gets thrown around like, oh, you have to be woke and all that stuff. I'm look, I'm pro all that stuff. I'm not going to speak for Levi. I know, but I'm not going to speak for Levi.
We're
I'm a
commies.
liberal. Yeah,
We're
I'm a
commies, dude.
liberal. I'm a liberal guy. Um, but
Well, fuck you.
and
I'm a progressive. Fuck you.
yeah,
You're
and
done. You're canceled.
yeah, right. I know. Uh,
I'm not parodying whatever. Fuck.
hey, I subscribe to the Young Turks. But I don't watch them that much, but
Yeah, yeah,
they're on there.
I'm kind of over.
Yeah,
They can do what they do. I'm over them.
they're a little too radical, And here's the thing.
No,
Anyway,
but
we don't.
I feel the opposite. They're a little too mainstream.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, all right. Maybe not. Okay. Well, it depends who you're listening to on that network because it's made of people and people are
Yeah, of course.
different. Okay.
And they're yeah, yeah,
Yeah. They're not all chank on that
yeah.
network. And they make that actually very apparent. But anyway, we're not talking about politics. But
No.
I just anyway, I wanted to put out there that we are not by any means anti-woke. I totally agree with what Jon Stewart said recently
Mhm.
about Jerry Seinfeld
Yeah.
talking about, oh, woke is destroying comedy. And Jon Stewart said, if you're that uncreative that you can't figure out how to be funny and not be offensive, then I don't know what you're doing here. And I agree with that.
Mhm.
And I do not write, I don't think I write offensive stuff. That's not the kind of stuff I do. I want everyone to be able to enjoy my stuff.
Well, I had three guys that looked the same and moved the same come to me and said, "We know you're with that guy doing that comic strip, and we know what he said about us."
Yeah,
And then they disappeared.
right. Yeah. I'm pretty sure actually the consensus is from my readers on Reddit. That's what happened to my Reddit post this past week was the I got too close and the mirrored men destroyed my post. Uh so yeah.
It's powerful.
Um but anyway, like I said, I was unaware of what happened with Craig. This has I don't want to say it's destroyed his career or whatever, but and he hasn't spoken publicly about this. And I want to point that out.
Yeah.
He hasn't come out about it. I think this has hurt him to the core. This is a sensitive author. We're
Mhm.
sensitive guys for the most part. Not all of us are Frank Millers and John Burns. And
We
um
care about how other people feel sometimes.
yeah, I mean they were saying on the podcast he had received an email from somebody just like a few weeks ago saying, I saw Habibi in a library. I want to burn the entire library down. And so, what I think we need to talk about is, I mean, look, we can't, we can't stop, we can't stop the mob. We can't stop this mob
Yeah.
mentality. But that doesn't mean we give in to it either.
No, 100%.
And it I struggle with this sometimes when I'm writing. And I'll be honest, there's a lot of times where I'm writing where I go, and I think I do pretty safe stuff. I don't think I'm on any kind of edge on my writing. But there's still times where I go, am I going too far with this? I don't know. Should I not do this? And I think about it, and should we? I think we should think about that stuff. But does that mean we give into that? Because we still need to be creative uh people. We need to put
Mhm.
uh uh new thoughts and ideas and stuff out there. And I guess I don't know if because we're kind of going all over the place, but part of the reason Craig was canceled because of
Yeah,
this
yeah.
Habibi thing was because he is not of Islamic or Arabic descent. And people felt he did not have the right to do a story about this. Well, where does that end?
Yeah,
I'm not a female. I have my one of my main characters is a young female girl. Can I
right.
not write about her anymore?
Yeah.
Um,
To the best of my
I
knowledge, Chris Claremont is not a female,
yeah,
but has written many, created many female characters.
yeah,
I mean, and it's like, how finely do you split the hair? You know what I mean? It's
yeah,
like, except for the stunt people and the resources from the US Navy that were used in the production, I don't know that anyone involved in creating Top Gun was a naval pilot, let alone a combat pilot. Yet that's what you see in the film. So are we going to split that hair down that far?
yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Um, the big is just getting off the ground. I've got, a mini comic chapter one out in the world as we speak. But I've thought about this kind of stuff because I see this happening, all over the place, not just in comics, but also in other media sources. My main character, right, is a mature female of First Nations descent, Pacific Northwest, and because that fits the
yeah,
area, you know, it fits the area. I'm not trying to tell the story of those people. I'm trying to tell her story of who she is. And she, you get, from the context of the story, you get as much of that out of her as viewers of our channel get that I'm of Swedish heritage. I've never mentioned it. It's not a part of the show. Our content doesn't depend on me being Swedish and presenting all that. It just happens to be that's my background. It just happens to be that's her background because it fits, the time, the place, and it's just kind of fun. Um, if I anticipate if the big gains traction and I do get criticism, I feel like that's going to be one of the sticking points with some people. Why am I writing a female? On top of that, why is she a First Nations person? I'm not trying to tell that story. I'm not trying
yeah,
to tell the story of her background. Just happens to be. Just like she happens to wear one of those puffy vesty things when she's hiking in the comic book. It's part of the character. It's part of the presentation. And that's as
yeah.
deep as it goes. But those things, and like what you're talking about, um, like people get hung up on that.
Well, I'm constantly disturbed, and I really mean disturbed. I'm constantly disturbed by the disconnect some people seem to have between reality and fiction, and how they seem to project what an author or an artist is doing as, well, that's them. That's who they are.
Mhm.
How else could they have come up with this? You know, it's called fucking imagination. That's what
Yeah.
that's what we do. Um, I've had this on a minimal level on some of my posts on Reddit. And
Yeah.
it's funny because I've gotten it again, you know, I'm going to reference our episode on Ed Piskor real fast. we got attacked in the comments, and not a lot, to be honest.
No.
But we got comments on both sides of that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And and I remember, you messaged me and like, we're getting it on both sides, and I said, because we don't have an agenda, and
Right.
we were just talking about our feelings on that show. And in this day and age of media, everybody has a fucking agenda. Everybody.
Yeah, and that's the
You
thing.
look
Like,
at,
what
you
is the
watch, if
motivation?
you're right, you watch Fox News. If you're left, you watch CNN or you watch MSNBC. And that's what it's like, people want to know, how do you feel? How pissed off are you about this?
No, they want to
And
know, what box are you in?
yeah, exactly.
That's what they
And
want to know. They want to know that for themselves. So they can
yeah,
like
yeah,
rectify the world around them. If I can put
right.
you in a
Oh yeah,
fucking
no,
box, if I can put
yeah.
you in a
What?
box, then I can discount everything about you.
Right.
You don't
What?
matter
What?
anymore.
Yeah.
You know.
What box are you in? So I can either be pissed off at you or I love you, and that's it.
Yep. You know,
And
that's what it is. And then you sprinkle on a healthy dose of, I'm going to build myself up by shitting on these people, and making them into a meme.
yeah,
With
and
no regard to that, like you said, the reality.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
right.
You know,
Well,
so
and
go
oh
on.
yeah, no, well, so on some of my posts on Reddit, it's kind of similar. I've gotten, I had one guy who was claiming that I was pushing a feminist agenda because Audrey usually ends up being the hero in my stories, and she's a young girl. And so clearly I'm pushing a feminist agenda. Um I've never once in my life thought about writing the story through the eyes of, I'm pushing a feminist agenda. I have no problems with feminists. I'm all for it. But
Yeah.
it's I write, my stories are for fun. They are for fun. If you're not having fun reading my stories, then I did something wrong.
Let me
And
let me give the
and
guy yeah, finish
yeah,
your thing.
so yeah, so I've gotten that side. So I've gotten, you're pushing a feminist agenda. Then I've also gotten, and in truth, I've maybe gotten this a little bit more, is people saying, uh Audrey deserves a better parent. Audrey deserves to be with somebody else. Oh, he's horrible. He's such a terrible person. Um and I usually leave that alone. But I did have one person in a recent story post something similar to that Audrey deserves someone that loves her. And in that story, that you can go read it, it's the doppelganger dilemma. The story starts with dad saying, the board games are in the basement. Go get a board game so we can play it together. That's not a parent who doesn't love their child. Spending time with them and playing a board game. Is he flawed? Yes, because people are flawed.
Hmm.
Is he not very bright? Yes. That character is not very bright because, one, it's fun to write. Two, it makes the stories interesting. Because if those characters were perfect, they'd be completely boring. The
That's
stories
what I was
wouldn't
gonna
go
say,
anywhere.
man.
Nothing
You
would
know,
happen.
if
And
you answered those criticisms about your dad character,
yeah,
it would be the most milquetoast story
yeah,
ever.
right.
And I'm sorry to give spoilers here, but your dad character is not like a bumbling, you know, archetype of chauvinism and representing the patriarchy. And then Audrey's like swinging in with all the buzzwords that we know, um, you know, pushing all that shit away. The
No,
person who says you're doing a feminist agenda, right, is only keying in on the fact that character A, character B, conflict. Character A happens to be dad, is not, not handling the situation, whether it be some kind of tree monster, whether it be, um, you know, with I just said tree monster because I really don't want to do any spoilers, for your stuff, you know.
It's
Um, but in character, the other character is the one that's like, because I forget which I said was character A and B. The other character is the one who's kind of like going in and cleaning up the messes, making sure they can make it out okay, which we've seen, that sort of dynamic, and it works and it's great for storytelling, happens to be the girl. That's the only thing that that person keys in on. You could have you,
yeah,
you could have the exact same situations, reverse them. Nothing changes except for which one is making the mistakes, which one is finding the resolutions. Doesn't change anything about the story. Doesn't change anything about the philosophy behind your stories. You know, so I mean, talk about like a shallow and triggered mindset that that person had
yeah,
to find that in your work,
yeah. And and
which tells me they don't like any comics ever,
yeah,
ever. They don't like X-Men comics at all.
yeah,
They don't like any of that stuff because no comic that's worth a shit, not even Superman, right? Has, all the damsel in distress stuff that, that are the old tropes from the golden age that we still get sprinklings of and we still use sometimes in our own stuff. Um, that's not even like if all stories were that and only that, I'd just be playing punk rock guitar. I wouldn't even fuck around with writing stories.
yeah.
Certainly wouldn't be reading them.
Right. Well, and I was talking I actually hadn't realized how this kind of intersected, but I was uh my daughter was on the phone with one of her friends and came into the office and had him on speakerphone, and she came in to for me to talk to him, and they were talking about Scott Pilgrim. And her friend was like, well, Scott Pilgrim's he's a pedophile. He was dating a high school girl. And I said, well, okay. I was like, I know that's probably a little more hot button than it was when Brian Lee O'Malley wrote that
Yeah.
and put it in the story. First of all, I mean, just, I'm not condoning it, but nothing really happens between Scott Pilgrim and Knives Chow. They like hold hands and they kind of kiss once. Like it's in the story. All of Scott Pilgrim's friends give him endless amounts of shit for dating a high schooler. I don't feel like anywhere the series might be called Scott Pilgrim, but I don't feel like anywhere in the story did Brian Lee O'Malley say Scott Pilgrim is a hero.
Yeah.
Scott Pilgrim is who you should look up to be. No, Scott Pilgrim is a character and he's a flawed person like everybody because that makes an interesting character to read.
Yep.
If Scott Pilgrim was perfect, that series would suck. And he's not. Yeah, he dates a high schooler. He's lazy. He can't keep a job. He cheats on his girlfriend that he's dating. That's what builds the drama and keeps that story going. And by the end of it, he has grown. If we want to talk about like a hero's journey and stuff like that,
Yeah.
he has grown and he has matured.
Not to get
That,
too technical, to the viewers, but it's called an arc.
yeah. And what's, it would be easy to discount some of these cries from a mob, or I don't want to say a mob. It would be easy to discount some of these cries if it was just random comments
Yeah.
on a Twitter or Reddit feed or whatever. But when it turns into a mob, that destroys or uh very damages someone's career. I just it's it's not enough to make me want to stop creating, but it's something that I think about because it's like, well, we all want to reach a certain level in our career and our creative journey.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when someone with just a little bit of a voice online doesn't like what you're doing, or maybe they're jealous of what you've achieved, and they like, well, this is the angle I'm gonna come at.
Well, if they drop a comment and you can ignore it, that's all good. But I think what ends up happening, and maybe even before they realize they're being ignored, they start to do the sharing thing. Look at these, look at this jerk, and then people glom onto that,
Yeah,
and they glom onto it because they feel like it's something like some kind of bandwagon they need to jump on. Um, I'll be totally honest. Before what went down with Ed Piscor, I had no idea who Ramon Villalobos was or Alex DeCampi. I had no fucking clue. Honestly, I still don't know who they are. I don't know what they do. I've heard bits and pieces of other people talking about the situation that via Lobo. If I'm saying, I apologize if I'm messing up the name. Um, had done some work, for major publishers. I still have no fucking clue what Alex DeCampi does. Um, and honestly, up until about 2020 or so, I had no idea who Ed Piscor was or Jim Rugg until I found during COVID, I found a YouTube channel because I wanted to start consuming information about comics, and I was finding some channels that sucked, and I realized that Comics Gamergate and Comicsgate were things, and a lot of that stuff was just geared towards that. Kayfabe was the first show I found that wasn't, you know, in that lane.
yeah,
And then, you know, hey, cartoons kayfabe is possible by the comics we create. Here's our comics. Oh, cool. Let me go into my local comic shop and see if I can find them. And then I became a fan. That's how I do it. You know, I'm blissfully ignorant, or maybe I just don't give a shit until you give me a reason to. Which, Ed and Jim gave me a reason to give a shit about their stuff.
yeah,
The other people I mentioned, they never did, and they never will.
yeah, yeah. Well, I've listened to Villalobos's podcast, Gutter Boys. Um, and I'll be on I stopped listening to it. It was so um I listened to a bunch of episodes. And also was not a recent thing that I stopped listening to it. Um it was just really mean-spirited. Uh and a lot of it was directed towards the cartoonist kayfabe guys sometimes, but other creators too, which I and it's been said, hey, Ed would go after people and say stuff also. But I always try and I'm always thinking about the high road. And you can't
Yeah.
be on the high road if you're doing the same thing that you're yelling about someone else doing. You can't say that asshole called me an asshole, fucking asshole. Like that that's where'd you get?
Yeah.
How are you I don't understand.
Yeah. Some
Um
people think that's winning.
yeah. And so it the show left a bad taste in my mouth. Some people like it. I've got no problem with it. I know people that have been on that show. I don't care. Like I said, I don't have an agenda. I I just want to make my stories,
Dude, that's the agenda, is
and I want
making
to
our
put them out.
comics. That's our
Um,
agenda, is making our fucking comics, right? And,
yeah,
even though I've got a character who this is the character's description, and I don't happen to be in, sort of any of those things, I'm not trying to tell the story of a First Nations person, their truth, any more than I am trying to tell, you know, the what it's like to be a professor of biomechanics at Stanford University, which she also is, because I'm not that either. I'll
yeah,
tell you what else I'm not. I'm not a sheriff's deputy. Okay. I'm not a land developer. I'm not a laborer for a construction company. I'm not a poacher. I don't guard an illegal grow operation. And probably most surprisingly, I'm not a Sasquatch. Those are all things in my story. So come and get me. Come
yeah,
and get me. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying?
yeah,
I mean, are we stupid? When did we get stupid?
yeah,
You don't like my comic? Don't fucking read it.
yeah.
Make the comic you want. Now, I
Right.
will say, if someone, a dude that looks like me or you, wrote a thing, this is the definitive story of, the Sioux tribe, and I didn't do an ounce of research. I just made up whatever the hell I wanted. And I'm
Yeah,
I'm telling you, this is the story through their eyes, and it's all bullshit. You're gonna know it. And you know what you can do about it? Nothing.
just don't read it.
Do
Don't
fucking
buy it.
nothing about it.
Yeah. I
You know? I mean,
yeah.
the review should say this idiot, made the most racially offensive, unresearched trope, and they're trying to sell it as the truth about a person without even asking somebody. That's what it is. Check it out if you
Yeah.
want to. You don't even have to cancel them.
Yeah.
Just it's just like reviewing a band, It was their second show. They don't know how to tune guitars. They tried to play three covers and tried to play an original. They couldn't really get together, and they argued and left the stage. You don't have to destroy them. You don't have to say they're terrible people. You
Yeah.
know? And if someone
Yeah.
does something that's overtly racist or overtly trying to do harm with their stuff, say, hey, my take on this is they're trying to hurt people with this publication. This is why I think that, you know, and let the chips fall where they may. That person's going to have to clean up their own mess.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I think where I'm well, I don't want to say I'm torn about all of this, where I'm like, where I feel like I'm just in a big quandary is, what do we do about it? What do we do about it as creators? Maybe this episode is, hey, go to the comments, let's start a discussion. Because after I feel like what's missing in both of these cases of Ed Piskor and Craig Thompson, and I'm gonna fully admit, Ed Piskor's story is a little messier than the Craig Thompson one. Craig Thompson has to do all with his creation. We know that there was maybe whatever something going on um with the other side of Ed Piskor. I'm not going to get into it. I don't have an agenda. Okay.
Mhm.
You want to talk to me about it? See me at a show. We'll have a conversation. Um, but I don't see a lot of creators defending them. And I think that's why, we saw a lot after the death of Ed Piskor of creators coming out saying, I should have said something.
Mhm.
We should have done more. We didn't say anything. We
Yeah.
talked
Yeah.
about we talked about that in the episode. We didn't say anything because we're all afraid of this mob mentality.
Mhm.
And so what do we how do we get past this? Because all we want to do is make funny books. That's all we're doing. none of us, and at least for me and Levi, we have no agenda with our books. We just want to tell fun stories.
You
And
know,
honestly, when I read Craig's work, and here's the thing, I've read everything that Craig Thompson has done. I enjoy it. I could never in a million years do, and I'm talking about, well, I can never in a million years do what Craig does. Me and my wife have a joke about movies that if the review says riveting, then it's just Oscar schlock, and it's like the most boring bullshit in the world. Now, I love Craig's work. I think it's great. I think it's well written. I get a lot out of it, but it's riveting. Craig's work is riveting. It's that kind of stuff, but he's telling a story. It's it's dramatic, and I don't see any agenda with his stories. He's
and
just telling a story, and he's being ridiculed for it.
yeah, it's
And
like
and and I think what's crazy is I had no idea about this. I had no idea. I had
yeah,
noticed that he had been quieter online. I knew he had moved back to the Midwest. Um, all of that was because of this. And it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. I mean,
yeah,
you could not go in a bookstore for years without seeing blankets. It was everywhere. I think I don't know. It's like in its 15th, 20th printing or whatever. And that's the thing. His publisher abandoned him after they made millions
dude,
off his fucking book.
dude.
Millions off his book, and they abandoned him.
And here's something to chew on. If some of the people we've talked about are some people that fit the same like description of what's happened because of some of these things that have come out, what would be the response if they, had a DOI and ran over somebody? Oh, that sucks. They shouldn't do that. But would that have affected their career as much? Where where do we put our care about the world? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that you should be like, one of the musicians in one of the bands I like, oh, they had a DUI or I mean Motley Crue, let's, be real. Um, but where are we actually placing the value? That's the last thought on that one that I have. But yeah, this kind of gets under the skin, bro. Um,
Yeah. No,
it gets under the skin because
I
it's
think
not doing
it's
anything that it serves except for the person who's banging the drum. Hey, I found a couple people that I think suck. Come get them.
yeah.
You know,
I just think I think it's scary because, I think most of us liberals, we are terrified of the book bannings and stuff that we see coming from legislature and, small town schools and whole states sometimes, and we're just like uh we can't believe it. This same thing, guys. Same thing.
it's exactly the same thing.
It's same thing.
It's
Um,
exactly the
so
same thing.
yeah. All right. You know what, Levi? This has been fun. We'll probably get slammed for this episode. It'll be
I hope
great.
we do because, I mean, I hope it gets people thinking. And if people have things to add to the conversation that gets us thinking, drop them in the comments. I don't think we're about to run out of time. Check out
Yep.
the links. You want to give us some hate and some
Just
some negative reviews. Go find our stuff in the link trees below, and we will see you. Ryan, take us out.
just do the damn thing.